Smart strategy, real conversations, bigger margins. This is Chasing the Margin podcast.
Welcome back to Chasing the Margin. Today we have Mr. Richard Moore. Richard, thanks for coming on.
Glad to be here.
So, Richard, you are our first guest of 2026. We took a little hiatus to take some time with our family over the holidays.
All right.
And now we're back rolling, getting to know more about business, and you were the first one. So,
All right, great to do it. I'm really happy about it.
So, Richard, tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of what your background is.
So I'm in the landscape design and construction business. The business has changed a lot over the years. It's a business that my dad started back in 1979, and I was out of the business really for most of my life. I went to work as a kid with my dad on a few occasions, but I never worked for my dad growing up. So I was pretty separated from it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was facing a career change, I was really debating what to do, and it led me into this. And I can go into that a little bit more later, but really it drove me into the construction business. And through that, we've made some acquisitions, and we've gotten out of some things, we've gotten into some things. And so that's the primary focus of the business is the landscape architecture and really landscape design and construction. And we've got a masonry division. I do a little bit of real estate dabbling here and there. So there's a lot of things I'm interested in, and I just enjoy pursuing business.
Yeah. So growing up, was it that you intentionally tried to stay away from Dad's business, or was it just not
That's exactly
interesting?
what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you think you were going to do then growing up?
So as a kid,
Uh-huh.
I made a point of telling people that I was going to take over the business and change the name to my initials. The initials are my dad's initials, and it's M.M. Moore Construction, Marshall McLean Moore. And so I told them I was going to change it to, Ram Construction, which are my initials, Richard Allen Moore. And so as a kid, I thought that would be really cool to have the business named after me and, that I was in charge. That changed over time where I really didn't want anything to do with the business. And in fact, once I finished high school and was in college, I got involved in the printing industry. So I was actually in the printing industry for about 16, 17 years before I made the switch over to construction. So I really was as far away from construction as I could be until really it was my wife that saw the interest that I had in it. And when I hit those crossroads of do I stay in printing or do I look to do something different, it's my wife that really encouraged me to talk to my dad and to have the conversation and see if that was a good fit.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when guests come on. Everybody's got a different background, but you're not the only guest that's come on that's kind of had their spouse push them into, hey, this is what your heart's desire is or what your passion is. Even though you may not see it as clearly, they can see it clear as day sometimes. So
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is, because I think that, there's people that work well with their spouse. There's people that don't work well with their spouse. They like to do their own thing. But a lot of times guests come on and they have the same kind of storyline as you, where it was their spouse saw it, their spouse pushed them into it, and now it's like, what? I can't imagine not doing this, because this is just who Richard is now.
I'm very fortunate that she saw that.
Yeah.
Because I love what I do. I love the opportunities. I love working for myself. I love leading people. I love leading a business. So it has really been a fulfilling change in my life.
So did you meet Beth in high school, college, after? Where did you
I
meet
met Beth at a college and career ministry at our church, back at Hillcrest Church in the day. And so we were involved in that ministry, got to know each other through that, and got married. So that was mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just worked in the printing stuff, I guess, for a while. And
I did really up until 2000, late 2000, I guess it was, and they were shutting down our print facility, or at least the portion of it that I was involved with, the commercial print division. And so I had an opportunity to relocate within the company, either to corporate, or they had a facility out in California. And corporate was in Chicago. I did not want to move to Chicago and wasn't thrilled about California. And so I was determining, do I stay in the printing industry locally? Lots of opportunity.
Mhm.
I had never really intended to stay in printing. I found it, I enjoyed it. It's something I was good at. I liked what I did. But I wouldn't say that it was a long-term goal by any stretch. And so as I was just really thinking through and praying through and talking through with Beth, what does the future look like? What do I want to ultimately do? That's where she chimed in, and really it was a great revelation to me.
Yeah.
Of a direction.
Yeah. Was it kind of a stressful time, or did you?
It wasn't actually. In fact, I remember her commenting at the time she was surprised that I was took it so easily.
Mhm.
I wasn't stressed out about it. I really fully believed that this was a transition that was orchestrated by the Lord, and that I felt like His hands were on it, and that it was gonna work out. I was going to land where and how I needed to.
Yeah. Well, I think that this might be a good time because I know that your faith's really important to you,
Yeah.
and it plays into kind of this situation that
Yeah.
you were in. So maybe take me through when you're facing maybe a change in career in this instance, or just a major change in general where you're having to make a larger than just a normal day decision. What's kind of your process look like that, and how does it relate to your faith?
Well, that's a great question. That's a tough one to answer. For me, it is it's just a matter of, I think, reflecting on the fact that, number one, I trust in God's plans for me. And so, in spite of how difficult things may look, how insurmountable the odds seem, I know that God's faithful, and He's going to take us to the place that we need to be. It doesn't mean that it's always comfortable, doesn't mean that it's always easy, but I was able to rest and be comfortable in the fact that I believe there was something better and something more that He had for me. I find myself, it's not even just for big things always necessarily. Sometimes it can be even in the little things. And I think for me, a lot of times it's just being comfortable admitting that I don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's a song, songs, music in particular, they speak to me on a pretty deep level.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a Christian singer-songwriter by the name of Jason Upton. And one of his songs, I probably will butcher the lyrics, but it has a profound impact on me. And I find myself kind of going back to that frequently, listening to it, praying through it, whatever. But the words are, I don't have the power. I don't have all the answers. I don't really even have a clue. And if I'm really honest, and if the truth were known of me, it might sound a little silly, but this is what my prayer would be. I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. And that's maybe an oversimplification of things, but the target in there is the fact that there's a lot of times we don't really know what to do, and in our own strength, we can make things up. And I'm pretty good at winging things. It's a pretty good skill of mine.
Uh-huh.
But really, when it all comes down to it, if I'm honest about things, I don't always know what to do. But I have a lot of trust in the fact that the Lord does know. And if I can simply humble myself and ask Him for direction, He has been so faithful in providing it all along the way. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful there's a comfort in the fact that I don't have to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
I can really rely on that. And it doesn't mean that answers always come freely. But I turn to that when work may be slow. You know, what's that next big job? Because we have lulls between, big project to big project, and we have little filler things oftentimes fill it in, but sometimes that runs dry.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that I'm looking at 3 or 4 months before that next big project that I've sold really hits. And I'm like, well, how are we going to keep this thing running in this in between? And man, I sometimes will start worrying a little bit, and then I just go back oftentimes to that song.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through the fact that I don't have to have it all. Lord, will you provide? You've been faithful in providing. Will you provide again? And man, it just is amazing how often the next day when I remember to introduce or to bring Him into things, how He comes through and I get that phone call or maybe some work that we're doing has expanded the scope. And it's just oftentimes I think He takes us to that place of reminding us that it's His,
Yeah.
It's His, it's not ours.
Yeah. I think that, we're a business podcast, so not everybody has the same beliefs as
Right.
as each one of the guests. But I think the ones that have come on who've shared about their beliefs on the podcast
Yeah.
would definitely relate to a business owner who has a Christian belief system that several of those things ring true that you said, that
Yeah.
at a certain point, worrying doesn't do anything.
That's right. Yeah.
You can worry all day long. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of times to try to be thankful for the things that you have in the moment, because you can't be thankful and worry at the same time. That's been an interesting thing that I've heard. And then I think that it's really important, like you said, that things don't always happen the way that you would like, and
Right.
sometimes they can be more challenging
Yeah.
than we would like them to be. But in the challenges, there's a lot of things that you learn that really help us. And as like you said, as a Christian, you just rely that He'll take care of things.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it is what it is, and you
Right.
just can't worry about it anymore. So I think that's really good, Richard. It's really, really neat to hear kind of how all of your decision making comes into play. And sometimes you just say, can't worry about it anymore because
That's right.
there's nothing it's going to do.
That's right.
So let's talk specifically about him and more,
Sure.
because you mentioned a few things that you guys do, but kind of give me like a few of the big overarching, this is what M More does for its customers, maybe lines of business, I guess is the best way to
Okay.
put that.
So we overall consider ourselves an outdoor concierge service,
Mm-hmm.
general contracting service, even if you will, for the outside of a home. Although we will do some commercial work, it's really primarily residential that we do. So we are looking to be the one-stop place for clients to be able to come to us and know that we can meet every need that they have. We can take care and make things easy on them by being a one point of contact to get anything done outside their home. And we've found that has transitioned occasionally to things inside the house, as we've earned their trust and they're looking for help. We do try to keep a delineation as much as possible because we do work with a lot of builders. So a lot of that we really will try to bring in a builder, some relationship like that to take care of the home-related things.
Mm-hmm.
But as a general statement, the outdoor side of the of the house is really where we tend to stay. Now, we do work for a lot of general contractors on the masonry side in particular, so our reach does include interior with flooring and even interior stone veneering and brick veneering and so on. But as a general rule, it's outdoor general contracting.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I know that you do a lot of masonry because that's I've seen it within working with you over all these years and
Yeah.
things like that. So when I think of masonry, I think of all these medieval movies that I've watched over the years, and the blacksmith or somebody that's wielding a hammer, and that's what I view masonry as. So, what is like masonry in today's terms?
So the masonry generally, I mean, you're going to conjure up ideas of scaffolding and guys on a line laying brick or laying stone or whatnot. So generally, I'd say it's an applied, it's a way of applying resources like block, brick, stone to oftentimes vertical surfaces, the veneer of a house, a fireplace, a chimney, those kinds of things. But there's also masonry would also be the flat work, the paving. That's it may be that you have a driveway that has a brick border, or maybe it's a full stone or brick driveway. Those kind of things. Those would all be masonry.
Okay, so. And I hear people talk about this a lot, and I'm sure you've heard people talk about it because it relates to you. I think that the idea of technology a lot of times was to create things that make it easier on people to not have to do as much physical labor so that it would be easier on their health or their physical well-being, etc. But it seems like the inverse is happening, where the jobs that use your brain is what technology is replacing.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, but in your industry, it's like really hard for me to envision any type of, I guess, robot to do what you guys do. I guess my first question is that what you see? And then my second question is, are there like robots or pieces of equipment that are making things easier for you guys now than maybe like 10, 15 years ago? Or is it still done kind of the same way?
For most of what we do, you're gonna see that it's still a very hands-on, non-mechanized process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you are going to have things that have been around for a long time. For example, a mixer that's going to speed up the process of mixing mortars and so on. That's been around for a while. Even a hand-operated crank unit or whatnot before we had electric motors,
Right.
Gas powered motors and so on, saws, things that maybe we used to chop or cut by hand that now we have skill saws and blades of all different kinds that help us to cut things faster, powered blades. But in terms of the actual setting of brick, I'm sure there are instances probably in a lot of commercial environments where maybe that works, but we're dealing with these details that typically can't be mechanized.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we do, not a lot, but a decent amount of what we do, and a lot of the work we really do enjoy is preservation work, like older homes, where we're matching an original part of the house, and we're having to find reclaimed brick that's been used previously, antique brick that has been pulled off of a house, and we're having to clean it and prepare it for reuse. And so we love that kind of work, to make something new look like it's old. And you can't get a robot to do that, right?
Yeah.
It is fascinating. One of the things, so we don't do a lot of concrete paver work. We subcontract a good bit of that. That's not our area of expertise, but in terms of mechanical innovation, it's fascinating that I've seen like flat work, like roads, that they do have these machines that can lay 8-foot wide stretches of road at a time.
Wow.
And you just feed the product in, and it just as it moves at a very slow pace, it just lays the pavers, shakes them and settles them together, and so on. So there are things like that. I don't know that for brick and mortar, stone and mortar, that you're ever going to have a device that can do that.
Yeah, well, I know that a lot of, or at least one of the ones, because I've seen you at your job site randomly one day.
Yeah.
That the people, some of your clientele, like the special touch of having that person, the uniqueness, that they don't want just the machine to come in and do something that's very basic.
Right.
So for those of us who are the untrained eye, you as the trained eye, is it something as easy as you can look at it and say, oh yeah, a robot definitely did that, or a person definitely did that? Is it as easy to tell because of the quality of the work?
I think that I could.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that everybody could,
Mm-hmm.
but there's definitely a craftsmanship that goes along with a lot of it. So a lot of our guys are artisans. They're not just laborers. They're not just unskilled labor. There has been a lot of time and effort put into training them to be able to do what they do. And so might there come a day when a robot can be trained to do that? Maybe so. There's an architect, passed away now, but by the name of Charles Dilbeck, and one of his architectural elements is what has become known as a drunken brick style, and he was really particular, and he was very hands-on with the work that was being built to his designs, and so he would design the facade of a house with brick that isn't laid in straight courses. Now, it's overall fairly straight. It courses out, but there's going to be a little bit of a kick out or cant a little bit to the brick, and it looks like it undulates a little bit. And so the joke is, it looks like you hired drunk bricklayers to lay this. Well, we've had there's a number of Dilbeck homes in the area. There's a Dilbeck Conservancy locally that are trying to restore and maintain these homes. And so we've done some work on these types of houses, and our guys have to be proficient at being able to change this mindset of, normally it's very key to make sure that we put a level and everything's just perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, the guys get to be a little creative and get to do things that are different, but to make it look still right, to make it look like it matches the style, you have to study the old style. Mm-hmm. You can't just start laying brick willy-nilly. You have to have, there still is a beauty to it. And so it's those kind of details that are key, because if you just did that on any house, it's going to look wrong. And if you even did it on a historic preservation in a way that isn't accurate to the way it was originally laid, it's going to look wrong. So that attention to detail is still so critical.
Yeah. Is it something that, like, when you look at the house, your brain doesn't, like, it looks right, but then if you pointed it out, people would notice, like, oh, that is, like, different because the bricks are laid not quite in sync with each other? Is that kind of what it looks like?
I think the casual observer would recognize the difference in it, but would also recognize that it seems intentional, that it's not just poor bricklaying, but there's a reason for it. There's something beautiful in the fact that it's different. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that helps answer that question or not.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Okay.
So going back to, with you saying the guys that you hire, a lot of them are artisans, I think is what you said. we kind of have a similar thing where we can bring somebody in, but it's really hard to have somebody who's not a CPA. And then from there, I guess on the tax side specifically, even if they are a CPA, without all of the tax experience or without specific areas of taxation, like it's really hard to just plug somebody in and give them a playbook and them know what to do.
I believe
Because
that.
there's so many things that, like, oh, well, this one thing happens in every 1,000 returns that you do. And if you don't know what to look for, then you won't even see it. It'll just blow past. So, we've always had, well, not always, at times we've had challenges finding these people.
Yeah.
And we try to like start with people who are new in the business and try to train them best we can. But if you're growing, you can't train people fast enough. So with your business, it sounds like you've probably experienced a lot of these same things, just in a different industry.
We have.
Have you, what's that process been like for you? Like, how do you train people? Do you have to look for people? Is it challenging? What are some of those areas that you've experienced?
I will say in a lot of respects, we've been very fortunate because we have oftentimes what we'll do is we will hire laborers, helpers that work under the direction of a brick or stone mason. The objective of the helper is to keep the brick mason, stone mason laying brick or stone as consistently throughout a day as they can. We don't want the brick mason stopping and waiting for things. We want him to be as efficient as possible in having brick ready for him, mortar ready for him, a sponge ready for him, whatever he needs at that moment. And so we train our helpers to really be mindful of what the mason needs. And there are some helpers that just want to be helpers. We've got some guys that are in their mid 60s, one in their mid 70s. That's all they've ever done. They just, I think there's an aspect of having kind of a servant's heart that goes along with that there's a contentment in just being a helper, just helping someone out. Others we find, and we ask these questions. What do you want to do? Do you want to learn to lay brick and lay stone? And so with those, we can take a little more of a vested interest in giving them a little bit more education. This is why we're doing this. And so gives them an opportunity to grow. So we're developing people that are maybe just starting out as a unskilled laborer and developing them into a mason. So there's almost an apprenticeship type level that we will take them to as they're transitioning from just being a helper into being a mason. Yep. And so that's one way we've done it. We have been fortunate, been able to find some good skilled masons occasionally. We've had to outsource occasionally and bring in groups to come alongside us. But that's tough because we have to oversee their skill set really closely to make sure that they can do what our expectation is of them with that fine detail. Because there's a real difference between what we expect of our guys and what maybe just your everyday brick mason is going to be able to accomplish.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you mentioned and talked about that would definitely apply to all businesses, because we do kind of the same thing with our specialized people in taxation. We look at everything that they do, and then, which is what you guys did, and say, okay, what of their task can we take away from them and have somebody else do that's not as trained? Yeah. And I think that that's really important in business is you look at somebody's time, and at the end of the day, we all only have so much time. You can only work so much in a day, even if you're working 12, 16-hour days. 16 is done.
Yeah.
So what can you do that's taking you an hour here and there, or 15 minutes here and there, or 5 minutes here and there, and have somebody else help do it, that you work more efficiently as a team?
Right.
And I think that that's a really important thing that people don't always think about. And I think that even, me, and I'm sure you and anybody who's in our businesses have said, oh, well, it only takes me 5 minutes. Well, like you said, well, it only takes 5 minutes to go get a sponge, or it only takes 5 minutes to go fill this bucket up, or
Right.
but all of a sudden you've done 5 minutes 20 times throughout the day, and you've spent hours doing tasks that somebody else could have done.
Yeah.
And you could have been doing the stuff that you love to do anyway if you hadn't have spent all those 5 minutes on these little bitty tasks that really do add up when you start to sit down and pay attention to it.
Yeah, they do. It's a great point.
Yeah, so I think that that's just an important thing that I wanted to point out that you said, because I think people may skip past it because it may not register, but when you look at something at a little more detailed level, it's pretty easy to spot.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So you mentioned earlier, and this is something that I really want to dive into and hear more about, that your father was the original owner of the business.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, maybe in the very beginning, when you first decided to switch from the printing into this business, how was that working relationship? How has it developed over the years? How is it now? Take me through that whole storyline.
Yeah. So, that's a great question. Once I really decided to make that change, I wasn't sure how my dad and I were going to get along in business. We've got a great relationship. I have the utmost respect for my father. But we're similar enough that I could really see us clashing. We both are a little bit, could be defined by liking to be in control of things. And so put the two of us together, and how is that going to go? My wife may disagree with this, but I can play second fiddle pretty well. And I had to reach deeply into that for that first couple of years working for my dad. Because I had to really understand this isn't mine. This is his, and I have so much to learn. And I did have a lot to learn. Now, there were definitely some tie-ins between the printing industry and construction. We, in both businesses, were taking a design and we're producing it in some manner. On one, it's going from maybe a digital screen to a printed page, whereas the other is going from a digital screen or a hand drawing to a walking, breathing, livable, 3D space, right? But we're producing something. There's a process to take it from one point to another. So there already was some understanding of that process that I came with. I was involved in that process previously, just on a different scale and different model. But so that was really helpful. But the personal interaction with my dad, when we first made the agreement, it was a 1-year agreement. It was let's try this for a year and let's see if we don't kill each other. And it actually went amazingly well. We both really didn't know how it would go, but it was a remarkably great experience. I mean, I found that I loved working for my father. And I really didn't think I necessarily would. I think that's one reason I shied away from it for so many years, is I didn't know how we would get along in business.
Right.
But it was really pretty fantastic. The relationship, I think, really developed. I learned so much from him in that process. And again, I think there was a little bit of humility I had to go into this with, knowing that I'm the new guy.
Mhm.
And I couldn't go into it with this, I'm the owner's son, because that kind of pride on a job site doesn't get you very far. So there was really, I had to take this position of really learning from the people in the field, and giving them the respect of the fact that they're the experts. And guys, I need to learn from y'all. I need to understand from you guys. And so I think that paid dividends. And I think that it has really helped to inform even the way I run my business now, in the fact that I don't go into every decision thinking that my way or my answer is the best answer, because there's a lot of people all around me, whether they work for me directly or they're a subcontractor. They've got great ideas. Some of them have done it longer than I have. And so relying on other people's expertise, I found, is really invaluable.
Yeah.
So going back to things with my father directly, though. So after 2.5 years, my dad got sick, and he was unable to work. He went into he just had some issues. It's really even still to some degree undiagnosed what happened. He went into this the issue. It had something to do. Well, he just lost all of his energy. He was totally zapped. He had no ability to really run the business. And so he stepped out for, what we thought in the beginning might just be a short time, but ultimately, and my dad's doing great now. He's doing really well. He's recovered from it, but what he never regained was a desire or drive for business. He lost that completely and never has since had the desire to step back in. I'm very fortunate for that, because it gave me an opportunity to step in and have a really clean separation. I hated what he was going through, but I think he and I will both now look back on it and realize it was the best thing for both of us. It was the best thing for the business. Because you do see a lot of situations, and I know even some other people in business who they may work for a father or a mother, and they never end up having that full autonomy when they need it, when it's time. And it's hard for that original owner to maybe let go and to separate. And we were forced into it. And so even though my dad had to endure that, and I hate the fact that he did, it really ended up being a good thing for the company. And the fact that, now if it had ended tragically, I'd have a different way of looking at this and talking through it now. But praise God, very fortunate that he has recovered. He's feels great. He's doing so well. And so we can look back now and say that was all really a good thing for taking the business to another level.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things, like you mentioned, with being a Christian, that I'm sure you've had thoughts around, that you didn't understand why things were happening the way they were in the moment, but then looking back on it now, it makes a lot more sense in the rear view mirror.
Yeah, it was the very first in this business, the very first hard thing I had to endure. Because again, I was 2.5 years into the business when this happened. And there were a lot of things that hadn't really fully been handed off to me yet. I had been pushing and asking, hey, why don't you go and let me take over this? Why don't you let me take over this? And a little begrudgingly, he allowed me to take some of those things. And it was really beneficial that he did, and that I was able to take those things because it put me in a better place to be prepared. But it came to, a point where I had to sell my first job. In fact, we were in the middle of a big project. We had sold it. I'm trying to think if we had started construction. I think we had just barely started construction on this one project. Mm-hmm. And the client sat me down and said, "Richard, why should I continue this project with you?" She said, "Your father sold the project with the understanding that he was going to be managing it. How can I trust that you can take care of this project in the same way?" And it was a great question. It was a very realistic question.
Yep.
And very fortunately, I felt very confident that what I had learned from my dad, and even those 2.5 years, prepared me to be able to do that. To this day, I've got a great relationship with that client. She allowed me to finish the project, and it was a showstopper project. It was a really fun one. It turned out so perfectly, and so the relationship with that client has been really wonderful. But that was the first big hurdle that I had to know. Can I sell? Can I accomplish things to the same degree, that with the same level of detail that we had a reputation for being able to accomplish?
Yeah. I think that one other thing, and this kind of plays into that, because you had been humble, over a couple years, it sounds like, of working within the team and with your dad, that you were able to sell this job. But I think that people don't always understand or grasp, in my opinion, and maybe this is just because this is how I relate to you as a person, is I think humility and just not feeling like you have to have the idea, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It has to be your way, and just taking a moment to breathe and listen to whether it's your staff, your team members, your peers, people that, like in your case, is a subcontractor that doesn't directly work with you, but just on this job. Or, in my case, a lot of times I listen to clients and just their business experience. It doesn't really have anything to do with my particular industry, but just listening. I think that if people would just take a step back and listen and be humble, that it will bounce them forward so much faster than having to be the guy with the answer, than having to, know what to do in every single moment. If you will just take a step back, then when these types of instances happen to where you're asked to do something that it's the first time you've ever been asked, but you've seen how it's done because you were humble enough to say, I don't have to know the answer.
Right.
It can really take you a step forward. So I just
can.
think humility is a really undervalued skill that I think truly great people have. So
yeah, great observation. I think that's right.
So you mentioned that this was the first challenge. I'm curious if maybe there's anything that you've gone through where a job didn't go quite the way you were expecting it to go, and that it was very challenging, and maybe just give some general tips and tricks on things that you've learned when something is challenging and how you can overcome it for anybody listening.
Yeah. I think every project, I think if you really analyze it, if you really look at it, it's true of every project. So you're going to encounter things that are unforeseen, unplanned for, and goodness, a lot of times, we may overreact to something. We may not take it in stride. We may blame other people for for the way things go. But I think a lot of times, if we keep our head about us, then I have found there are always solutions. We've run into situations before. I'm thinking of another project where, we're digging a swimming pool, and we find there already was a swimming pool there that's buried. We had no idea. A survey of a property in the beginning gives you some great information, but it doesn't prepare you for what's underground and hidden, right? And so it's moments like those that you have to stop, assess the situation, and revise your plan a little bit. And so that's kind of a funny example of the kind of things that you can encounter. But we run into things like that all the time that we're just not expecting. And we just we have to roll with it and take a moment and reevaluate and move forward.
Yeah, well, I think in anything to do with construction, housing, masonry, this is probably a true statement. But that example there, it was something that you didn't see in the beginning because there's no way you could have known that.
Right.
And maybe it cost extra time and effort to get, I guess, the original pool removed and then the new one put in. So is that something that when you face that, you have to stop and then address it with the client and say, hey, so we originally estimated this, but because there's no way we could have known that this was going to happen, it's going to be this?
Yeah.
So I'm sure that that's not a fun conversation to have.
Those aren't fun conversations to have, but I will tell you one of the things I've learned over time is we communicate that up front with most clients. In fact, that's an example that a lot of times I will use with a client.
Okay.
Is here's an example of something we've encountered that's unforeseen. So a lot of times in our budgets, we will put a contingency, and when discussing that with a client, we'll relay that very example of the pool that may be hidden in the backyard underneath an old pool. It's not an uncommon thing to come across. It's not all the time, but we've done it. We've come across several in all the years, things we weren't expecting. Maybe not even always a pool. Maybe a concrete slab that's 12 inches buried, right?
Yeah.
But those types of things, those examples we give that we can't be prepared for. So we do let a client know in the beginning, be expecting that there will be something that we're going to encounter that we're going to have to deal with. So let's put a little budget in here to remember. Let's put a line item in here to remember this is for the things that we are likely to encounter. Hopefully we don't, and we won't need that, but we plan for it. We expect something will be unexpected.
Yeah. I think that's a good business practice for anybody, especially if they're selling the actual product of the business.
Yeah.
Is to try to over communicate at the beginning, to try to share experience of, from my experience, it's typically this. These are some of the things that we could run into. When that happens, we try to stop and let you know.
Right.
And I think that, in my industry, and maybe the same for yours, we would call that like out of scope. And I think that if people will stop and not panic and just address the problem at that time, well, then the client is typically okay with it as long as they're a reasonable person.
That's right.
And then you don't have to worry about it at night like we've talked about.
Yep.
And I think that that's good advice, that just stop, take a second. Like you said, there's always an answer.
Yeah.
You don't have to know it, but don't panic. And also don't just push forward like nothing's happening, because that also creates additional problems down the road.
The communication is huge. And like I said, most times you're going to have a client that understands and is reasonable about it. We've all had those clients that aren't. In your situation and in my situation, I'm sure. Hopefully I haven't been one of those unreasonable ones
Never,
to you
Richard.
guys. But yeah, it's the communication. As in everything, the communication is so key.
Yeah, I think that for me, and I'm curious if you've done this too. I've had something go wrong, and sometimes the client's not reasonable. And in my head, I'm like, well, I could have done this one thing differently, and it would have kept this from happening. And then I almost like reverse justify to where I'm like, well, I could have been a little better, a little better. And then all of a sudden, I find myself in this really bad spot where I should have communicated much more clearly to the client on these are all the things we did to prevent this from happening. And then when you let them know, they're like, oh, okay. And I've gone through all these stressful emails or phone calls because I just didn't try to address it right out of the
Yeah.
gate.
Yep. I've been there. Absolutely have been there.
Yeah. So what is it within your job and with the guys that you have working for you? Because you mentioned this earlier, and especially on these historical homes or things that require a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you put in place to make sure that your expectation and quality that you would do personally translates to each one of the guys? Like, how do you trust them? Do you always oversee each project at the end of the day? Like, how do you do that as you grow?
I don't personally. That's a great question. That's a great question because as we grow, there's less and less that I can manage personally myself. One of the things I do love about the job is being in the field. I love checking on things, but I can't see everything. And one of the things I've been very intentional of in this last year and will be more moving forward is I have to separate myself from that more and more to focus on building and running the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key really for me has been, and I think everyone can relate to this, is building the right team, putting the right people in the right positions that can manage and oversee to the same expectation level that I have. And that's the hardest part, is to the same expectation level, because I am a perfectionist in a lot of ways, and I really expect a lot out of our guys. One of my guys who retired about a year and a half ago now, he gave me a picture that I still have up in my office, and it was a joke. He took a picture of a level on a level on a level. And he wrote on it, "Richard, thanks for making us strive for perfection." And so that's kind of the joke, is my expectation is that we're really targeting the very best work we can do. If our tolerance is too great, is too much, then everything gets off a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. I want to always go back to the plan, go back to what is right, go back to, the most basic concepts, that if this is supposed to be square, it needs to really be square. If the target is a certain elevation, we need to be at that elevation. We don't want to allow ourselves unnecessary wiggle room. And fortunately, most of my clients get that, whether it's the builders or the homeowners that we work for directly. They get that. Most of them do. I have had a couple of clients in the past be like, "Richard, I love what you guys are doing. I love the detail, but I'm okay with lightening up on that just a little bit." But that's my personality. Is I love the perfection. The detail is what really is exciting to me, is making it just perfect, and that gets expensive. And again, that's why we get hired, is to do those jobs that not everybody can do because of that level of perfection. But going back to what you're asking, getting the right people to manage that and oversee that is critical. So whether it's a superintendent that is, well, obviously it starts with the individual. The crew leads need to have that same mindset. Superintendents, project manager, really everybody. And I'm beginning to hand more and more of that off to let other people see that. But I still love getting pictures of it. So I like going back and being able to at least look at pictures to make sure things are meeting my quality. And I'm still on the job site a decent amount. And I'll probably always will be to some degree because I really do love that. But I've got to trust that my people are giving it the same attention that I want it to have.
Yeah, baby steps, little changes.
Yes, right, exactly.
Well, let's wrap up with some just fun questions,
Okay.
and then we'll make sure people can get in contact with you. So, in general, what exactly is it that's your favorite thing about the job? Like, why do you do masonry, landscaping? Why the outside of the house? What is it that just draws you to it?
Wow, that is a tough question to answer. This will be an answer like my daughter would give, who doesn't want to think about the real answer is all of it. I love all of it. It really is true. I do love all of it. I would say my favorite thing, it changes sometimes, maybe based on what I'm spending more time on. Realize the masonry has always been a fascinating aspect to me. But it was just really one part of the process until I bought out my subcontractor back in 2018 and brought it in-house. Well, I've consumed, that business. I mean, I eat, live, and breathe that business. And so I've put everything I have into that. And so there is this fascination now where I definitely spend more time on the masonry side and the detail and all of that, partially to educate myself, to make sure that we're the best masons in town. That's what we want to be. We want to be the ones that are called for the high level detail work. Mm-hmm. And so I do love the aspect of masonry. And if I'm going to be honest, I love stone more than I like the brickwork. But there's some brick details that are pretty fascinating. And architectural brickwork with those details, some of that can really be fascinating. But I'm going to probably say I like the stone masonry over brick generally. I love watching plants go in the ground. There is something about all the preparation that is, it's got to be perfect as well. The bed amendment, the irrigation, all those things are such a critical component of it. But the fun part is putting plants in the ground. Watching that happen, I used to be more involved with laying plants out, a little more hands-on with strategically where does everything fit together. And I have guys that do that and do a great job on that now. But I love watching a job get planted. Yeah. There's something about the softness that provides to the landscape. And, architecture, I love good architecture, but there is something about planting that softens, that it brings architecture into scale. Mm-hmm. And so there's just something really nice about that softness that landscaping brings to that transition to architecture.
Yeah. Okay, well then on that topic,
okay,
you can be as broad or specific as you want.
Okay.
If Richard is designing the perfect backyard,
okay,
what goes into the perfect backyard?
All right. So, an architect friend of mine by the name of Ralph Dusing, he is not just a phenomenal architect, but he is also a phenomenal landscape designer. We have some of our best work has been installing, building gardens that he has designed. And I would have to say I'm going to give him credit, and I know he won't even take credit for it because it really is an architectural, a landscape architecture staple almost. But I do love water features, and every garden should have a water feature of some sort. So it's funny I say that because, when my dad started the business, we were a pool construction business. So that's what my dad began the company as in '79, was building swimming pools. And shortly after, my dad retired, I stopped building pools in-house. But it's not because I didn't love them. It's because I didn't love building them. I really found that to be a good outdoor general contractor, I needed to subcontract that work because of the level of detail. And so we've partnered with, a great pool builder and worked with several over the years. But one of our primary contractors, my dad taught the owner how to build a swimming pool. He worked for us for years and years, and now his son works for him. So getting out of the pool business wasn't because I don't like water features. I love them so much that we needed to step away from it and let somebody else do their best work at doing that. But every garden should have a water feature. That's my broad input.
All right, I like it. So before we wrap up here, I want to make sure for people who are looking for maybe some landscaping or something for their house, how do they contact you? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so we are redesigning a website right now, but our website is mmmoreinc.com.
Okay.
And so if they go to www.mmmoreinc.com, they're going to find us.
Okay. And do you have pictures on the website, or is that in the process?
We do. Yeah, we've got a great website right now. It's just time to update it and refresh it. But yeah, they can see pictures of what we do, and yeah,
cool.
It's the best way.
And then the last question that we always wrap up with is,
Okay.
If you were talking to an entrepreneur, somebody that's either in the business, thinking about entrepreneurship, or somebody that's just looking for advice, what's the best advice you could give an entrepreneur?
I think the best advice is, as they're going into it, they need to do a real inventory of themselves. They need to know their strengths, and they need to be honest about their weaknesses. Because they will find that if they falsely think that they're good at something they're not good at, it's going to be a quick step to failure. And not to say ultimate failure necessarily, but maybe at least in that one area. And so you've got to surround yourself with the right people who can do the right work for you. If it was up to me to do all of the administrative tasks, I could never run the business I'm at now. I've had to at points in time, but that's not my gifting. My gifting is not administration. Mm-hmm. I can do it when I have to, but it takes away from the skill sets that I really do have, the leadership skill sets that I've been given. And so know yourself, know what you're good at, but more importantly, know what you're bad at, what is a struggle, and make sure you're prepared to compensate for that with the right people.
Yeah. I think that's been a lot of the theme of the podcast is be humble enough, be proud of who you are, but also be humble enough to know when that's not who you are.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's great, Richard. We appreciate you coming on. It's been a great podcast.